Hi everybody. Right, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my Witcher tabletop RPG fight macro sheet. This is supposed to be a tool to help dungeon masters run combat when it gets a little bit chaotic. So to start with, I'm going to say a couple of things to introduce. First off, some of the terms used in this macro sheet might be a little different to what you're used to, because I'm working from a German version of the Witcher TRPG rulebook, and I had to translate, so I might not have got the exact terms right in some cases. So please don't be confused by that. Second, the idea of this is a simplification for dungeon masters. It might look a little complicated to use at the beginning, but it ends up being very easy, as one of my not quite so computer happy friends has assured me. It's pretty simple to use. Right, the whole thing contains Excel macros. So you might get a warning up here saying, that macros have been deactivated and so on. You need to activate macros for the sheet to work. However, if you're afraid that I've made some, evil code in here that'll wreck your computer, do feel free to check the code. It's messy, I'm sure, but feel free to look at it. There's nothing malicious in there. Okay, this sheet is limited to a maximum of 15 combatants, of which a maximum of 10 can be NPCs. Right? So if you're running larger stuff than that, I'm afraid you won't be able to use this sheet. So, how do we use this thing? Alright, first off, the very first thing we need to do before we use this thing is, before the session begins, we want to prepare our combat troop. So I could go and prepare my combat, and for that I copy these stat blocks into my prepared combat sheet, right? Then I start noting down their stats. I don't need to put anything down in initiative, but let's put like a reflex of, let's make a duelist, right? And let's put the reflex pretty damn high. Let's give him about 40 hit points and 40 stamina. Let's give him an attack of 17, a dodge of 17, a block of 17, a reposition of 13, some armor, and a more heavily armored torso, no armor on the head, and a special ability of, some notes. So this might be a situation where the character has somebody present who might help them out. So I'm going to sort of go, I'm going to put my max hit points down here and my max stamina down here, if I want that as an additional note. And I'm going to add a recovery of 8. Yeah, so this is like a simple stat block. Now I only want one enemy in this scene, so I'm going to delete all of these names, and that is a prepared scene. A larger combat troop might look something more like this, where I have a whole host of soldiers, ghouls, drowners, and a griffin in combat with a couple of notes, secondary attacks in some cases, So basically, I've got a stat block of everything that I need. Right, when that's prepared, one thing I forgot here is I can of course also note my weapon damage. Let's give him a decent sword, so I'll give him 46 plus 4. Right, and that way I've got all the notes that I need for the combat. So now, this happens before the session. So when in the session, my player characters encounter this guy, right, what I do is, I load that sheet. So I named the sheet Prepared Combat 1, right, and I load that combat group, and as you can see, the duelist has now been loaded. And my player characters are already in the list. By the way, how do I put my player characters in the list? I can put some names down here. So let's take Geralt, Yennefer, and Dandelion as an example. Oh no, it's called Jaskier now, isn't it? Right? As an example. So when I first set the sheet up, those character names will be there. And when I then load my combat group, I'll have just my duelist and these guys, right? And now I'm ready to roll initiative. So what I do is I click on roll initiative, and my duelist rolls an initiative's value automatically based on reflex. I asked my players to roll initiative. Now Gerald, as we know, is a beast, so he gets an extremely high initiative. Yennefer isn't too bad on her feet either. Jaskier is not so much the fighter. And now I have my initiative, right? And then what I do is I sort by initiative, right? When I click this whole thing gets sorted, my player characters get marked. That's simple enough. If I had a more complicated combat with a lot of people, so let's take, for example, my example combat troop. If I have that and I load this, right, and then I sort of do my initiative, yeah? Oops. Load the combat group, roll my initiative, there we are. Add in Gerald's beast and a little less. And now I sort by initiative. We will see that this sorting occurs here and here. So now all of my NPCs are sorted in the order of initiative, which should make things a little easier for me. Right, so moving on from there, I've now got a sorted initiative set. What do I do? Combat begins. So Geralt, for example, now chooses to attack my griffin. What I can do now is I can roll tests here. The way to do that is simply by marking the stat I want to test on and then clicking one of the two test buttons. This test button is rules as written in the rulebook. So what it does is it rolls exploding tests. That means if you roll a 10, you continue rolling and adding the number to your prior rolls until you stop rolling 10s. If you roll a 1, then you roll basically a normal roll after that, but subtract the result from your result. So this is the rules as written test. If you want less random combat where like a random monster doesn't roll like a 60 on an attack by pure chance and then kill Geralt with one blow, you might have a sort of a simple test that rolls a 1 as a 1 and a 10 as a 10 without explosion. But either button will lead to a test down here, and this is where I'll get my result, right? So basically, it's pretty simple to roll my test. So if Geralt's attack turned out to be a 23, I would now have dodged, right? One thing to note is that I can of course also do my own attack, yeah, versus Geralt. And now if I assume that I hit, the sheet is capable of doing the hit zone calculations for you. So the Griffin maybe is not aiming to a specific area, but the 22 turns out to be a hit. Geralt rolled poorly on his dodge. And I want to now know the hit zone, so I'll click the hit zone button, and this tells me I've now hit his left leg. It also tells me what I have to do about damage, right? So I have to subtract Geralt's armor on his left leg and then half the damage I do. Now the Griffin might attack for, I don't know the exact rules for this, but just off the top of my head, let's say the Griffin attacks for 66 plus 4. I can now click here, I get 66 rolled, plus 4 is 29, which is, the player subtracts their armor and then we half the damage, and that attack is resolved. Right, that would be a non-aimed attack. If you want to do an aimed attack, the penalties aren't included for this, so if you want to do an aimed attack, you do have to know the penalties for attacking something. So let's say this ghoul is particularly vicious and wants to go for the head, right? I would roll an attack here, quite simply, yeah, 15. I would have to know that the attack penalty for aiming an attack at the head is 6, leaving me with a result of 9. And if by some miracle that actually were to hit, I could then click hit heads here straight away, and I would get the result that is needed to do the damage calculation for the head. So this is supposed to help you out as a dungeon master if you don't know those numbers precisely. In addition, one thing you can also do is you can roll your critical hits here. So if your attack beats the defense by a certain value, you're going to get a light crit, complicated crit, difficult crit, or a deadly crit. And you can either aim that strike, as you see here, or you can go for something random, and you will see then, if you then click the crit button, you will get the effect of the crit at that area. So this was left arm just now, and it's an extra 3 hit points damage if I do a light crit with -2 on actions to the relevant hand, right? A couple of notes here. Compared to rules as written, I have changed some of the crits and simplified some because this method makes it more difficult to write long text. So first off, the disfiguring scar light crit, which can happen as on a head blow, is pretty irrelevant in combat. It basically only penalizes social encounters. So I basically removed that. That can't actually occur because it's for most combats you don't really care whether the NPC soldier is then capable of doing whatever kind of charisma rolls. I have amalgamated the torso light crit. So we now actually have effects from both this is a broken ribs effect, and this is the other effect, the effect where you actually modify the target's recovery is removed, because generally speaking, in my experience, NPCs don't actually take the recover action that much, and it's not so necessary, so be aware of this. I've simplified the, if you do a head crit, a difficult crit, it turns out to be the right one. I've simplified the stun save. Rules as written, this is a stun save rolled every 1d6 round. I've simply made it once every 3 rounds to make things a little simpler. And in general, when a crit would cause a loss of the strength stat, I've simplified that to a loss of damage dealt. So, associated skill checks are not listed, just for brevity and ease. Another thing to note here is that this system does change the probabilities of certain crits happening. What's going on here is that these crits are determined as though the strike were aimed, which doesn't make a huge difference, but if you were using the rule as written version with an unaimed strike sort of rolling 2d6 to get your actual crit result, you would find, for example, that the worst possible head crit result that occurs on a roll of a 12 on 2d6, that occurs in 1 of 36 rolls, right? Rules as written. Whereas here, what we have here is you already hit the head, which occurs in 1 in 10 of cases if it was an unaimed strike, yeah? And then you have a 1/3 chance, if you crit on the head, of getting the worst crit, so that works out to 1 in 30 rather than 1 in 36. So the probabilities are slightly different here. If you don't like that, you might have to adjust. Sorry, that was the simplest way to program this. I found, personally, I don't think it makes a big difference in actual combat. Right. Once you've done all this kind of stuff, you might have caused some damage. So let's say our poor soldier Till has taken 30 damage to his 15 hit points. And let's further say that the Griffin has spent like 20 stamina on major avoidance staff. This ghoul has lost 15 hit points in the round. And Soldier Peter has taken -5 hit points and also some damage to his armor on the torso. Right? We can do all of this stuff at once. We can take as many notes as we want. And when we want to update what's going on, we can click this at any time, and this will update the actual results. And as you can see, characters who have died, or just for the hell of it, characters whose stamina has dropped to 0, actually are marked with colors, so you can easily see when something impressive has changed. If you want to clean up this sheet during combat, like say Soldier Till is now out of action, he's down to -15, he's not going to be hurting anyone anymore. The easiest way to do that is simply to click the Remove Dead button. When I click this button, the Soldier Till will disappear from this list and also from these stats. So I'm going to do that right now. And as you can see, the list gets cleaned up and everything is made a bit simpler. Right? So this is how you can basically use this. One additional point to make is that if your characters get situational penalties of some kind, you can actually just put these down here. Let's say the Griffin is off balance. That gives him basically -2 to pretty much all defenses and attacks until the next attack. If I now mark and roll an attack check, this penalty will automatically be included if I click one of these buttons, as will any penalty directly below, or even any bonus. All of this will come to a net penalty of -11 that will be included if I click it like this. However, if I leave a space free, then this will no longer be included. So the 2 here is not being included because the space above it is free. So this allows you to sort of put in your secondary attacks without worrying about that being counted as a penalty or any such thing. And at the same time, it allows you to quickly stack and note down whatever penalties or situational modifiers you might want to as the round progresses. So if the Griffin gets attacked in a condition imposed, you can just quickly note that down, and then for its next check it's there. right? And when you delete it, it's gone. Okay, so that is pretty much all you need to know to use this. I will note that there is a limitation, I don't believe I said this at the beginning, a maximum of 15 combatants. If I were to have more combatants than 15, so let's add, I don't know, here, and Regis, and let's say, oh, who else? I'm missing somebody. Oh yeah, Milva, of course. So we've got like all of these 6 characters here now. If I reset the sheet, and I now import my example troop of 10 individuals, and I roll initiative, I'll get a message telling me that I've got too many combatants, 15 rows, 6 player characters, and 10 opponents. It's too many. So you will be informed if you're missing somebody here. Also, if I sort my initiative without sort of actually having my player's initiative in there, they'll of course be put at the bottom, but this is easily solved simply by sorting again. As you can see, this will then be amended. All right, have fun with this. I hope it simplifies your combat sessions. Yeah, have fun.